Hola, hola. My name is Ricardo. I am the host of the Lucha Jovers podcast here in the Voices of Wrestling podcast network. We are a Spanish speaking show dedicated to discussing and analyzing pro wrestling from all across the world. From AW to CMLL, we talk about American wrestling, Japanese wrestling, and of course, Lucha Libre. If something big happened in the pro wrestling world, we will talk about it. So if you know Spanish or have a friend that knows Spanish or want to practice your lucha libre pronunciations, go listen to the Lucha Jovers podcast right here in the Voices of Wrestling podcast network. Nos vemos por ahí.
Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragongate is how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragongate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So fast to finger down. Dance tonight together. Here everybody's singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for October 3rd, 2023. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network feed or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate podcast feed on all podcast platforms and applications. And you can follow us on Twitter. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. You click the red box that says sponsor this podcast, and you can set up a one-time or recurring donation. No obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears, joining alongside, as always, Case Lowe. In case I did not bring this up intentionally as we were talking about my soil issues, my literal soil issues. But I think I tried what I think is the most disgusting Coke variant this weekend.
Okay.
Y3000. Have you seen Y3000 about anywhere?
I believe so. Let me do a quick Google here just to make sure I've seen this. And yes, I have. Yes, I have.
It's supposed to be Coke from the future. And I think that Coke now is just applying labels on it because I feel like it tasted just like the Dream World one that you had me try that one time.
Yeah, that's what I thought they had just redone the Dream World. I didn't realize this was something new.
Yeah, like the one thing I'll say is instead of it being like Dream World had like that kind of cherry vanilla taste to it that was not necessarily this was one created by artificial intelligence, allegedly, and it was like a weird dreamsicle kind of thing, but not really good at all. I'm looking to see how they describe this here. It was made by insights gathered both by human and artificial intelligence that helped inspire the unique Y3000 experience.
Sounds terrible. That sounds like a bunch of corporate mumbo jumbo.
Yeah. This website, which looks like an AI website, is saying that allegedly it's supposed to have hints of chai tea. I love chai tea. Did not get that whatsoever.
I do not love chai tea, but now that you've brought this up, I will, of course, be giving this a shot, and I will be reporting back.
Yep. I'm interested in seeing what you have to say about it. It's one of the ones that I saw this at CVS, and I was like, well, damn, I've got to try it, and did not make it past my car ride back home. Did not make it that far. But we are here this week talking about Dragongate as finally October is here. And not to editorialize too much, Case, I think we could probably put September 2023 behind us, and Dragongate probably does as one of the, I think, if not one of the more boring months, but also one of the most dissatisfying months in recent Dragongate years. We're in October. that's great because we have coming up ahead this week. We have Buyuden on Thursday, Corkin on Friday, and then Gate of Origin on Monday. Do you think we've finally escaped this bad September?
I hope so. It's kind of two sides of the coin, and neither side is good. On one side, you can look at it as a very boring month where not a lot happened other than establishing a main event program, which we'll talk about and that I think Dragongate deserves a lot of credit for. On the other, one of the most cursed months in history. I don't remember if Minorita got hurt. I think he got hurt mid-August, but we'll lump him into this conversation. You lose Minorita, who was a champion. You now lose Fuda, at least for a short period of time. Nagano, it seems like, for an extended period of time. And that is without addressing the elephant in the room, the TN Revolution injury, which, it's one of the most depressing things I've ever heard in the context of Dragongate. It is really, really bad news. And the statement that was sent out from the Dragongate English account, it's probably not fair to editorialize and assume subtext in digital word, but that wasn't a cheery, he's going to be out for some time message. You know what I mean? Like that was bad news all the way around.
Yeah, and from a company that usually the most they will say is one of these kind of things. It is something where you compare and contrast that Kaito Nagano, they're already saying like, hey, at the very least, he's signed for a match on the 20th. He's not going to be on that match. Very clearly hurt his shoulder in the last few minutes of the D-Courage versus Rookie Selection Triangle Gate tournament match. But it is something that when you look at this and the way that Revolution went down and the way that everything has been kind of quiet for the last week, and to the extent that I did not hear an update from anyone leading up to this case, did you?
No.
Yeah, and the fact that we did, unless there is something where the swelling made it seem better than it was, which I don't think that's what it is, to be honest here. Like, and that's just me just guessing. I just can't look at this as anything other than, hey, maybe I don't expect to see TN for the remainder of this year after seeing that.
No, I think the people that you and I normally talk to, they're eager to talk when the news isn't as bad as it seems, and it's been largely radio silence on this one. I think everybody is in it's a grim affair over there over this.
At least with the Fuda thing, like I watched the entire show with that. I think like, okay, let me see when Fuda like jacks his hand up, and it was one that like there's been no announcements about Fuda. He's not on the Corkin card, but it is something where maybe it is hoping to get him through Monday in his hometown before going like, okay, he's going away again for a little while. Like that's my guess right now.
That's the hope. Dragongate did a lot of good in the direction of Ryo Fuda over the month of September. That's one of the few positives we can take away from this. I really thought they came close to hitting a home run with him on the show that he got hurt. I thought he was awesome in Kobe Sambo Hall this past weekend. And, of course, now he's down with a hand injury. So hopefully he can make it back for Gate of Origin and have that Brave Gate match.
Yeah, I just now saw it was posted a couple days ago, like during the weekend, like almost right after the show from Kobe Summer Hall this weekend, that he was pulled from the show, and Mie, he had a match with Kai announced, and then soon after the Corkin card, the full Corkin card at least, was announced, and he was left off of it. It's something with like Fuda. I look at this as kind of like oh man, really? Whereas Nagano's thing, I guess we're doing injuries up top, but Nagano's shoulder injury, I felt like in Kobe, coming off like of a double drop kick kind of thing, he toughed it out, like probably to his detriment, but it was something that one has to wait, and how things have been with people's shoulder injuries in this company, that I'm not super optimistic about it either.
Well, that's the painful part of all of this is, Tien gets hurt on a stomp. Nagano gets hurt on a drop kick. These guys aren't going out there and dropping themselves on their head or doing risky dives to the floor and getting hurt that way. We're talking about basic things, and they are being met with the worst possible scenario. Seemingly on every show now, there's something new, and that is taxing. it's one thing, again, when, you see Ben K take a knee to the face and he gets knocked out, and you go, okay, Ben's going to be gone for some time, but he'll be okay. And then you just, again, Nagano, I've got my eyes laser focused on this match to see when he gets hurt, and it's on a drop kick, and it's just like, oh my God. Like, I'm not mad at him. I'm not disappointed with him. It's just one of those things where you look up at the universe and you think, oh my God, is this really what we're doing right now? Tien wasn't bad enough. Minorita wasn't bad enough. We're going to lose this guy to a drop kick? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and it's with Nagano being at the spot where, like, the topic of Nagano has been, like, where has he been? Like, not taking those steps. Like, I remember a couple weeks ago in Case, when's the last time you've seen a Space World? And yeah, it was something that it felt like that this match in a lot of ways was I thought, like, his performance in that match was not necessarily, like, the highlights that we were seeing, like, through his first few months on the roster, but it was something that I feel like a lot of his shakiness kind of was improving to that point, and then, just dropkick, something that even at his point of career, he's probably done hundreds of in practice,
Yeah, for those that haven't seen the match, he drop kicked Madoka Kikuta off the apron, and then he just somehow fell directly onto his shoulder. I mean, it's one of those, he could do this again. He could do this 100 times, 99 times. He's going to roll out like normal. In this one, he just somehow took all of his weight directly onto his shoulder.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. And I think that it's a situation that when you, like, at least with Revolution, we knew that he was one of the few things happening in September, like, that there was going to be movement on him and probably around him. You couple that with Nagano, who maybe not unit-wise with at least how the company has moved over recent years, but ready for that kind of step, and then Fuda getting that push. And I think that when you look at it in concert, it just kind of, like, takes you back, and it gives you shows like, well, what we're going to see on Friday. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, when a lot of things were based around these kids and they get hurt, then we're back to the Triangle Gate, and then the now officially announced Kikuta versus Shimizu at Gate of Destiny, the build to that. So it's just one of those things that I was really hoping to get some unit movement for the future kids by the end of this year, and it just seems like by hook or by crook, it's not happening.
Yeah, especially in the case of Fuda, it seems like, all right, we got to do something with him now. For so long, he was the lowest ranked guy on the roster, and I don't think I'd put him there now. I think he's elevated himself, even if it's, say, just above Daiki and Tanaka. It's still movement, and he's got a title match coming up. It would be nice to see him be able to find his way into a unit. What I think is really important is, if you notice, when these young guys are still out there, the seconds, let's say it's a Yoshiki Kato match, the seconds are Nagano and Tanaka and Daiki and occasionally Fuda and occasionally Junior.
Junior's been out a lot more than someone in his card position has needed to be.
Yes, and if I were Dragongate booking, I would be challenging myself to, by the end of the year, make that kaput. Make sure that Junior is solely aligned with whether it's M3K or a young guys unit. Make him a part of that and only a part of that, and get these young guys broken up. Get them doing something, whether it's with Yamato and Dragon Kid and Doi and Punch, or I don't care what it is. Get them doing something.
Yeah, and it's something that now eyes go to Tanaka, eyes go to Daiki, and eyes go to Kato. Like that's like kind of how it's like such a wild thing, thinking about the future project and the way that, like, before New Japan was starting to get their dojo refilled, Dragongate was several years of producing these guys, and it's something.
And for those that don't know, how did New Japan replenish their dojo?
Oh, by taking away their anachronistic size policy.
And by mimicking what company?
Dragongate.
Yep. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, but it is something that with, like, Dragongate debuting 4, 6, 3, and enough that you would see a roster, and I think there's, like, pretty good delineation points now of post 2018 Dragongate era, Torimon era. Like, it's something where, like, there is, if we went through and kind of put them in their groups, I think we'd find a relatively a somewhat of a balance but it is something that with all these kids, and I know that we've gone down the list of them so many times before, I would love for somehow to actually get everyone healthy at the same time. It just feels like that has not been something that's been possible.
No, I actually think we talked about that at the beginning of the month, that, oh my God, these guys are finally all healthy at the same time. And forget that.
Right, yeah, so forget that. Forget what might be happening with the rookie selection in the Dragongate tournament. They obviously were going to lose to D Courage, but it was one of those things that took the wind out of the sails getting out of that show. Not the only things happening from this Kobe show from the 30th. The main event was the last match in Big Boss Shimizu versus Reiwa Generation Leaders, as Big Boss Shimizu overcome the 2023 King of Gate and the last man to defeat him in a singles match, Kota Minoura, winning with the shot put slam immediately afterward, making the challenge for his hometown in Osaka. Gate of Destiny main event has been set. And Case, I'm not going to... how do you feel now that I'm not going to bring up anymore, but what if they don't do it in Osaka?
I'm thrilled. This is the right decision. Now, there are problems with this match that we can address, but big picture, just looking at it head on, I think they've nailed the build to this. I think Shimizu feels hot. I think this is the best run of Shimizu's career, and I'm curious to know if you think otherwise. And this has been a 6-month story in an era when you think about, for how long Ryo Saito has been booking Dragongate now, it's a lot of month to month, maybe 2 months, and really some of the longer term feuds have been like lighthearted. Like I think about like Dragon Dia versus Don Fuji and stuff like that was spread out over the course of a few months. This is a 6-month program that was set up in May at a Big 5 show and is now gone through, at the very least, November of this year. And I think every step along the way has been super entertaining. So I am into this match, the Dreamgate match in November. I loved Shimizu versus Minoura and Kobe. Not as good as their King of Gate final, but a match that I went 4 stars on. And I think Shimizu's the right guy for this moment. I really like the work that he's been doing.
Yeah, I largely echo. I was 4.25, but I was 4.5 on the King of Gate match. I think everything they've done with Shimizu, I don't think you could say without being a liar that they haven't protected him, kind of babied him every step along the way. Very reminiscent about babying Kikuta to the finish line at Dead or Alive. And it is something that, they've gotten to that point with Shimizu where it is something that on May 5th, it was an obvious slight for him to be used as like, no, you are not on this level. We are on this level. And just showing it over the last 5 months. And I think it's something where when we get to Ideon Arena, it's something where I think I'm now fully aboard the fact that just because, like when you have a title program, you have to look on the other side of the coin. Kakuta's dead in the water. Like, I think it's like there's no momentum to him at this point. It is something where it's not like a big step back. The story was told, he made that step and opened the door to that new era. But I don't think you could look at anything that they've done on one side of this title feud and be satisfied with it, frankly. It is something that everything with Shimizu, exactly. And if it is something that they have been setting up, that's been spending the 6 months essentially is the entirety of Madoka Kakuta's title run to prepare everyone for the Shimizu title run, that's all right. I get it. You told the story with Kikuta, but I don't have to, like, it is something like that it feels like in this, now that everything's kind of come to the head, that they could have done more with Kikuta in the meantime while Shimizu was on this road, right?
I agree with that. And I think, big picture, this is my complaint with the match. My stance on Kikuta's Dreamgate run, have the matches been as great as we would want them to be? No, they have not. I also think he hasn't been put in a position to succeed. You go back to the Yoshioka match, this odd babyface versus babyface battle of respect match that nobody really connected with. You go to the Minoura match, and they kind of both worked as a babyface. Like it was very awkward because Minoura had this great run to the title. He beats Yoshioka in this heroic hometown match. He beats Shimizu, where he's obviously the smaller guy. And then again, you're in this position where Kikuta and Minoura were almost working at both like tweeners. Like neither of them wanted to commit one way or another. And now my fear is that we've built Shimizu up, and all logic is saying Shimizu should be the babyface. Think about the Ben K match in Cork and Hall. Shimizu worked underneath for about 12 minutes straight. This guy was getting decimated and dominated by Ben K, and he's the one that made the fiery babyface comeback. And that has been a reoccurring theme in all of these Shimizu singles matches. Logic would say, okay, Shimizu's going to his hometown. He is the guy who's been working underneath. He's going to be the babyface here. The problem is that D-Courage now exists as the ultra baby faces in Dragongate. They are, as we've said a number of times, the main characters in this promotion. They're the guys that sell the merch. They're the guys that have the longest meet and greet lines. They're the guys that ultimately people care about. They are the hometown, home team rather, baby faces. They are Dragongate. They are representing this company more than anybody else. It's going to be awkward for Kikuta to position himself as a heel, but I also think that's exactly what he has to do. They could run into, despite 6 months of doing the right thing and getting to the right match in the right building, which I was very concerned they wouldn't do, they are now still being met with the problem that Kikuta had in July and then he had in August, and I think if he would have had a defense in September or October, he might have had that same issue. I don't know how to solve this.
Yeah, and it is something I think with that, and talking about Kikuta, some of it is that where were the heels? Like, you beat Shun, you were not going to go back to Shun. No one else in Z-Brats other than Kai you could have put to that level. And unless you were going to do the turns, it just feels like that the company went babyface versus babyface at a time where it now you're looking at doing it again, and without like any sort of like pull, I guess. It just kind of at a certain point, I don't know what the point is, kind of like if it's babyface versus babyface at this, and your heel units are just basically kind of doing the same old thing, then shouldn't we blow this up and relook at D-Courage? Because we're now at a point with them as main characters, and I think that you look at the crowd, you talk to the people, and you look at how the company has gone. Going with D-Courage as the main character has made sense for the last 18 months. I think that it was the right first step before really solidifying the new generation leaders. But it is something now that we've really have to come to terms with the fact that when you look at the landscape, when you look at the frontline players, it's all so heavily baby-faced that it's something where maybe if you were able to have a couple more heels, like maybe throw the money at Ada, get him to do a 6-week program building up to Oda City or Sendai. Just give something there, because at this point, when it's going to be Shimizu versus Kikuta in Osaka, I don't know how the crowd is going to like really get behind Kikuta as a heel when they've been given no reason to, or like nothing of. The reason why I say like there's not been enough face and heel matchups, I just to kind of go to that, is that it's not engendering any sort of emotion at a point where you're able to do the flip. Like that's one of the things about Doi and Yamato, is that they had the ability to, they have the abilities to do that. And I don't know if Kikuta does, because we haven't really presented him a battlefield of which for him to kind of get that level of support.
I made the argument in June when the match between Kikuta and Yoshioka was booked that this should start the fragment of D-Courage. Yoshioka should lean heel, and Yoshioka should eventually turn heel. I thought D-Courage had served their point up to that point for 18 months, 12 months just about with Kikuta, and I felt like we were ready for something new. Do I think they're an active detriment to the promotion? No, I do not, but I also think we're in a point now where the promotion is almost being held hostage by these rigid baby faces when their babyface champion is wrestling nothing but other likable baby faces. We're in a very awkward spot here. I would hope, and I can ask you this on October 3rd, a month out from the match, who do you think is going to win, Kikuta or Shimizu? Who do you think is going to win? Who do you think should win?
the answer to all three of those are Shimizu.
Mhm.
Like, frankly, I don't know, like other than the idea that you do some turns, I guess. But if Daya turns heel, he's not a Dreamgate challenger. Like, you don't really have like that added thing here. If Yoshioka turns hard heel, you might be able to get some sort of emotion there. And I think when you've gone babyface versus babyface for so long, you need to have a heel reaction at a certain point. And here's something that I've been thinking about today, Case, that I wasn't ready to do this today, but I am going to plop this on you.
Okay, I'm ready to be plopped.
And I feel like that this, in a lot of ways, kind of gets to the real point here. For all we know, and inside and outside, we're on the same page about this. For all we know, Ryo Saito is the primary booker.
Yes.
And has been the primary booker since the August of 2021, if I'm right.
Yes.
Like right after Yoshino's retirement. So now he's had a full 2 years, 26 months. Do we think he's doing a good job as a booker at this point? Because I think that's kind of what this is. Like, we look at how the units are. We look at how the Dreamgate has been booked over the last 2 years, and even a little bit leading up to Ryo Saito taking over that role officially. But I think we could say that tendency that was shown in 2021 reared its head again the next straight year. So I think we can draw a conclusion there, or draw an inference. But I don't know if Ryo Saito is a good booker. And it is something where I look at the landscape and I'm kind of coming to the thing that I don't know if his booking is actually helping out the promotion anymore.
Okay, let's really slow this down and look at this from a few different angles.
I told you I'd plop this on you.
This is good. This is, I'm okay with it being plopped. This also could have been 10 hours of research, but we're going to fly by the seat of our pants here because that's more fun. So if we go back to August of 2021, is there a single iconic moment that comes to mind in the same way as, and I'll use the example of Shingo turning on BB Hulk in 2008, doing the dance and hitting the exploder suplex. I think you and I both recognize that as an A-level, top-tier Dragon Gate angle in history. One of the most memorable moments there's ever been. Off the top of your head, and there's a very strong chance that you and I are going to forget some of these moments because, again, we're doing this, as we're discussing it, we're sort of fleshing this out. Do you think there's been at least one of those moments in the last 2.5 years?
Yes, I would say the 12-1-2021. I would say the double, the mask versus mask tag match with Dragon Daya losing. I think that was the clearest thing to a end of World 1 kind of emotional moment.
I think that's a great poll. I would throw that in there, and I would throw the cage match from this year at World. I think that is something that people are going to remember for a very, very long time. I mean, the match you referenced, I've never been more stunned by a finish in my entire life. I think it might be up there as the single most shocking moment in Dragon Gate history, the cage match, whereas sort of the evolution of that feud, because a lot of it can be tied back there. It was the right result. It was the satisfying result. It was everything that we expected, and it delivered as such. So at the very least, you can give him 2 iconic moments. Do any more come to mind before I continue my line of questioning?
I would say that you have the cage match. Those 2 are that the one that I would say not to that level, but I think for the real ones, was the surprise debut of Mochizuki Jr.
Yeah, that caught me off guard. I was not ready for that when that happened.
But out of like grand emotive moments that if we want to look at Ryo Saito's turn, there's been a couple of them. I think that's fair to say. It's something that he's been able to at least capture the heightened drama that we've seen throughout the remaining 23 years of the promotion. Yes.
What do you think about the match quality? Compare it to different eras if we want to look at, the beginning of the promotion in Toryumon, the early years of Dragon Gate, the late 2000s, when you have the big 6 coming to fruition. You have, say, a golden era there of 2013 to 2016, the era after that, and then sort of Saito's era. Where would you rank the match quality historically?
I think that it is kind of something where the match quality might be a shade off, but it is something that I don't know if we can purely attribute that to Saito. I think there's a lot of other things that kind of happen with it. It's not that I disagree with this being made a point. It's just that I think that when you've looked at how the roster has changed, that has also influenced that somewhat too.
Yeah, it's a deal where I guess let me phrase it to you this way. Do you think? I don't know how I want to. I don't know how I want to ask this. I do think Saito's responsible for it to a degree because Saito's obviously the one putting together matches. And I guess my larger point here is, I actually think this has been a relatively healthy match quality point for the company in its history. I think it's certainly better than, say, 2007 to 2010, maybe 2006 to 2010. It's stronger than the very early days of Toryumon, just simply because there's guys with more experience on the roster. And I also think it's better than that 2017 to late 2018, basically 2017 through Pac's return. I think it's better than that, and I think that's partially by way of Saito putting forth really strong matches on paper, those matches delivering. The difference is, it doesn't peak as high as 2003 Toryumon. It doesn't peak as high as 2005 Dragongate. It doesn't peak as high as 2013 through 2016 Dragongate. And I think that is what a lot of people, Western fans, are hung up on.
Yeah, and I should say it's a shade less, but also acknowledging the fact that over his tenure, I've had more, no, 20, I almost said more 5-star matches, and I realized, no, RED, loser must disbands happened technically before he was GM. So, yeah, like, it's something where I think that a lot of how at least entering Dragongate has kind of gotten to, it has been a little bit, if I would say one thing, kind of a correction to how things were changing in the company 2018, 2019, and it does feel not necessarily like a full like return to tradition in ways, but it does feel like I would say that the tenor of the ring style has kind of, I don't want to call it like I feel like I'm almost like sniffing my own farts by describing it this way. I don't want to call it neoclassical Toryumon, but it is one of those things where you see the point I'm trying to make, though.
Yes, I do. It's an interesting era. I'll ask you this finally, as we sort of discuss Saito. I have one more question after this, but in terms of units, in the last 18 months, or 2 years rather, 2 years, have there been iconic units in the history of Dragongate that have taken place during this time period?
This is where I think I'll get people mad at me, and okay. It's something where with some of the other stuff we'll talk about later on in the program, I have been kind of looking backwards at units that now we have 5-6 years distance. Outside of Natural Vibes, I'm not confident that any of these units will have the kind of nostalgia. I think Natural Vibes, longevity, and looking at like just the people who came through it and how it's really kind of elevated the roster, we'll look back at Natural Vibes fondly. I think that their legacy is cemented. M3K will get lumped in.
I want to stop you there with Vibes real quick. That is absolutely a testament to Saito's regime, Saito's era, for making Natural Vibes feel fresh and urgent. Losing Genki, losing Susumu, adding Shimizu, adding Strong Machine J, finding the right use for Jason and Jackie at different times. That is absolutely a credit to him, at least during this era.
And I would say probably one of the biggest credits. But I think you look at the rest of the unit landscape over the last few years, M3K will be rolled into whatever thoughts we have about the overall M2K legacy. I think that it's just naturally like, this is the fourth M2K. Like, we have to acknowledge the fact that it is in part of a continuity. Outside of that, I think that personally, I have found myself less interested by the heel units over the last 6 months. I think that one of the things that the booking has gone to that has really handcuffed the roster and handcuffed the shows is by having a heel unit be so small, you are basically not only restrained by the amount of matches you can do on the card and the idea that you're going to have a lot of shades of gray baby faces out there if you don't have a big enough heel unit to make it work, or baby faces that are willing to show shades of gray. Don't think we've seen any of that whatsoever over the last 2 years. But when you have like Z-Brats at a point where it's 4 guys and you could do basically a singles match with Ishin and then the 3 caps names guys in a trios, I think that is something that, yeah, SBK, and that's unfortunate, but going all the way back, Case, how long have I said Z-Brats is restraining the cards? I've been saying
you've been on that for quite a while.
And it's something that when you look at the other units, I mean, let's us forget Team Boku being a recent thing. Like, there's been a lot of kind of ephemeral units. Like, Kung Fu Masters has been like a fun thing, and we've kind of kept them in that box. But high end,
I would argue not enough is being done with Kung Fu Masters.
Right,
I really like their match in Kobe.
Yeah, no, like it is something where like that's the problem with Kung Fu Masters is, well, how much is too much Kung Fu Masters? I think we both would argue we could probably have a little bit more Kung Fu Masters on these cards. But
I was just on the Gaiora website, the shop, and I was like, do I want a Kung Fu Masters t-shirt? I really like the work they do.
Yeah, but when you like, so you have that, but then you have what I think when we get into Dragon System 25 next year, Case, one of the things I'm going to throw on you is make a list on like some dead week, make a list of your 5 worst units all time. High end might be threatening Overgeneration and Deep Drunkers as number 1.
Oh, they're not number 1. I mean, you have
Overgeneration,
you have elevated for
people.
That.
Yeah, Antios is going to be like, I like the fact that Antios exists because I could defend Deep Drunkers. So,
yeah, I don't know about that. No, I mean, look, high end sucked. I hated them. They were not enjoyable at all. But I wouldn't put them on that level. I mean, did Overgeneration really elevate anybody?
Oh, Lindemann?
I don't know. I feel like like his heel turn is where he really started to take off, and I didn't even like that heel turn because that's when he was painting his face and he had that rope with him. I wasn't into that at all, but that's when his stature in Dragongate certainly made it seem like he was elevated.
Ishida, by the time that Overgeneration was done, Ishida became like the breath of fresh air in Maximum that was completely kind of like just Doyoshi and Jason for a while.
Yes, but I would attribute Ishida's elevation to Maximum and not Overgeneration, which is maybe me being nitpicky, but I don't look back at Ishida's Overgeneration time and go like, oh, that was the start of something special. I think about that with him and Maximum.
And the controversial one, Overgeneration might have kind of been when Eita figured out how to be like the charismatic heel, because he did the exact opposite.
Well, I mean, look, think about this. We're almost a decade removed from Overgeneration Eita, and all I've wanted for the last 8 years is 2015 Eita. That's all I've wanted.
You just want the trash bag dinosaur back.
Yeah, that's
now that's for old listeners. That's for old listeners.
Yeah, I just want Eita versus Liger and Eita versus Tozawa. It's, I don't need him doing chair spots. I want him doing swanky technical moves.
Yeah, that is very true. It is something that I look at the unit landscape and I feel like that is the biggest indictment of Ryo Saito. I think that is something that we going through the last 5 weeks and seeing how constrained the cards are. And some of that has been the fact that Shin's been in America. Like, that is true. And that is something that we could talk about, the positives and negatives about DG and USA now coming to almost its second year to the close, almost in a weird way. But it is something that I think it's undeniable that when you have these 3-4 member units, which I think have been the trademark of unit composition under Ryo Saito, it constrains your card and makes them worse.
Okay, but with Z-Brat specifically, this unit started the year with 6 guys, because it was Shun, Kai, Hyo, and Ishin, and then it was SB Kento, and it was Diamante. And it just so happened that Diamante got hurt on a Noah show this year and was forced to miss a bunch of time. So they were down to 4, because obviously SB Kento was in Mexico. And then they got Diamante back for a minute, and it looked like they were going to get Kento back, and then that didn't happen. And then they were back down to 4, and then of course 3 with Shun leaving for a month and a half. They were circumstantially 4 guys. I don't think that's the way they drew it up. But then you'd have to go to the unaffiliated, or to, again, maybe my idea with D Courage and Yoshioka. You'd then have to turn somebody heel. I don't think this was drawn up on the whiteboard as a 4-person heel unit. I think unfortunate circumstances have led them there.
I think that you could very easily turn Yoshiki Kato heel, and you have a heel heater in Z-Brats, and he would be at a good point for that.
Fair.
Like I understand, like, not as things haven't gone as planned, but at a certain point, like, you have to kind of book with your back against the wall and kind of do that. And I don't know, with having Z-Brats at 4, Gold Class at 4, D Courage at 3, M3K at 4, that really has helped out anyone when you have these restrained things. Like, why not have Don Fuji go zombie veteran again? Like, that is one thing that when they were able to adjust to things in the past, we saw Doi Darts and zombie veterans going into Matt Blanky. Like, they've shown the flexibility to adapt to this before, but instead they've stood pat, and I think it's been to the active detriment of the company.
So I'm going to ask you a very subjective question, because I think for everybody the answer is going to be a little bit different. But let's look at where Dragongate is now, and let's look at where it was 10 years ago. And if you really want to get in depth with this exercise, we go back to 2003 as well. Do you think this era of Dragongate has less fun than previous eras of Dragongate? Because going back to Zombie Fuji as a heel, that made me think of this.
Yeah, funness is kind of one of those things that I think maybe with a lot of the departures, it's been hard for the company to be fun, to be as fun as it was before.
There's just, it's odd, because there are things that I wish Dragongate did more of, complicated multi-man matches, a lot of rules, a lot of different, styles of being. I think they've gone back to some over-the-top gimmicks, even if they're presented more so in a clear Ultimo Dragon presentation than in maybe, a Shima presentation. It's just odd, because some of the things that I miss from Dragongate are now happening in GLEAT, and I watch them there, and I go, oh, well, this feels dated, this feels off, and I don't know if it's just an example of everything in GLEAT, feels like diet soda to me. It's just not the real thing, and so thus I'm less interested. Or if maybe the era of Nanawa style elimination matches has just passed us, and wrestling has evolved past that. But I also think, no, I'd really like to see some of that stuff in Dragongate still. I do think this is a promotion that, for as much as I still enjoy it, for as much as I love it, I still think this year it's either the second or third best promotion in the world. I mean, no one to me is touching CMLL, but it's hard for me to differentiate Dragongate between AEW or New Japan. I mean, I just straight up have not liked most AEW this year. The high-end stuff is awesome. The high-end stuff is the highest-end stuff in the world, but there's been so much dreck and so much stuff that I hate in that company. I don't think I could vote for them in the top 3. In New Japan, is that to a lesser degree? The high-end stuff is incredible, but there's also just a ton of New Japan stuff that I'm not interested in. The one little sprinkle that is missing from Dragongate is not the match quality. It's not developing young talent. The booking, as we're discussing now, is not perfect, but they've certainly hit their mark on a few different things throughout the year. It does just feel like this year has missed, for a lack of a better term, signature Dragongate pizzazz. And I don't know what that is. I can't put a finger on it. I can't give you a specific example, but I could certainly hear that argument that it's missing just a little bit of that.
And like you brought up GLEAT, I think that when you kind of see something, and maybe something that now 5 years we kind of have to acknowledge, was maybe it is something that when you had those two sides come together, you got those 15 years or those 20 years, and we're able to create that. But when they're apart, it's just not the same. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I'll say this, I feel like, given all the difficulties that's happening right now, at least like economy wise and all of that, I still like Dragongate's future. I still love the promotion. It's still like not a thing where like I've been able in the past to like get through stuff. Like AEW is a promotion now that I very much get through at this point, and I more so than not this week I felt like that. But I wonder if a little bit of it is the fact that, like when everything kind of split and shook out, like the magic kind of was like spread out, and it just, it's not as magical anymore. And I wonder if there's a little bit of that.
Yeah, I don't know, because I will still be the first person to shout and defend at other pundits and people in the Discord, like, this is still an elite level promotion. It just is. It just is. I've got 54 plus star matches this year. The in-ring has been great, and there's been high-end stuff this year as well. It's just in an odd point where, it constantly feels like we're waiting for dust to settle. There's an anxiousness to this promotion. You really don't know what's happening next, and I think maybe the argument can be made, okay, for so many years in Dragongate, for a decade plus, we didn't know where the company was going, but we trusted them. We knew there was a good driver behind the wheel, and now we don't know where they're going, and we're checking GPS on our phone going, are you sure this is where you want to be? Are you sure this is what you want to do? Are you sure this is going to be the plan? Because I think to some degree trust has been evaporated, even if, again, I mean, God, I look back at cards from 2017 and 2018. Those were not good shows. That's a period of the promotion I have no interest in going back and watching. Whereas, stuff from 2021, 2022, 2023, there's a lot of good to be found there. There's a lot of stuff that I'll feel nostalgic for in a few years. A lot of stuff I'll want to go back and rewatch. It's just, it's an interesting time for the company.
Yeah, and the one thing that I'll add on to it, like, it is something that when I've been like thinking about this, and I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks, and it just was something that kind of came to head over recent days today, and I felt like, why not plop it now on a week like this? I think back to 2020 and in COVID, where even though Dragongate kind of was forced to go behind doors and everything was kind of like thrown up in the air, what do we do? Dragongate was the one company that you look at the empty arena Sambo Hall show, the empty arena one that happened after that, and then the King of Gate stuff before they went back in the crowds, and they were still going forward. I don't know. It does not feel like recently Dragongate has gone forward. It feels like that there has been this wait, and at least last month, I could have gone like, oh, this wait was for TN Revolution. Obviously, you can't blame that on the company. You can't blame what happened with Revolution's injury on like the booking or on anything like that. I guess for me, it is something where I feel like I've like talked to you at least privately about this for years now, like the idea of the generation change and the specter of what is Dragongate as it moves into a generation of people who will have been who would not have been born when Toryumon happened. Like that's been a reality more and more on that. And maybe it is the lack of trust that I wish I had as they're going into this thing. And they're at this time where I think that there will be a Dragongate in 5 years, but it's going to be a company that, just because of natural progression of time and people's careers, I mean, we're on a week where we're having 25th anniversary celebrations. There's I'm not going doom and gloom here. And if it comes off as doom and gloom, I'm sorry. It's reality. This company will be drastically different in 5 years. And I just wish at this time when we're kind of preparing for that I felt a little bit more confident with the person at the wheel.
Yeah, look, I mean, I wish everybody could get into the mindset of adapt or die with this company specifically, because I think far too many people hold on to nostalgia and haven't been able to readjust the lens that, again, and I will reuse the phrase, this is still an elite level promotion, even if some of the faces and some of the tones have changed. Real quick, I have one more question for you in regards to this. I do want to go through the units just in my own mind real quick. We both agree, I think Vibes is a gold medal, a historic unit, one that is so great that has done good for so many different wrestlers. I am a little higher on Z-Brats than you, although if you would have asked me at this time last year, I would have said they're on their way to being a historically great heel unit. I think that has dipped a little bit. Gold Class is a mess. I won't be able to properly evaluate Gold Class for a decade. D-Courage is what it is. I think jury's still very much out on them and their legacy. And I will forever be the high man on M3K. I love this unit. I love what it's done for Mochi, for Susumu, for Kanda, and for Junior. And I think Saito deserves some credit there. But as we put a bow on this conversation, if you had to give a letter grade to Ryo Saito as a booker, where are you at here?
Am I allowed to do pluses and minuses? Or are we
Yes.
just...
No, that's where we went to America. I don't know what European schools do, but we went to the American school system. Well, plus or minuses are great. What do you mean?
Yeah, I had a couple professors that just said, there are 3 grades in this class, A, B, or F. So,
No, A, B, or F? No.
grad school, man.
Oh, what a sham.
Yeah. Why do you think I decided not to go for my doctorate?
I don't. Look, I got a girlfriend in grad school right now, and I can't believe some of the mumbo jumbo she's got to put up with.
Oh yeah. Though it would be fun to be referred to as Dr. Michael Spears on this very show. That's not the reality
I
we're
would
in.
never do such a thing.
Yeah. It's more of me tapping myself on the shoulder for that. But letter grade.
All right, and a proper letter grade. Here you go.
I would go B minus.
Interesting.
I'm sorry. It is something where I think that if we decided to go through the main event, we talked a little bit about it, but the main event title picture and the way that I don't think that other than Yuki Yoshioka, I don't know if anyone necessarily we can say is that much better off. Like, Shun was strong going into his second title run. Like let's not act like that it was the big elevating thing. This was kind of the thing where he needed that, and it was the right time to do that. I don't know if you would say that that the title picture merits anything higher than a B minus.
Okay. So the champions since August of 2021, it's Yamato, it's Kai, it's Yoshioka, it's Shun on that short run, and then it's Kikuta. Oh man, I don't know. I didn't like that Yamato run because it made me a little uncomfortable. Like, we were kind of starting at ground zero after every defense. I liked the Kai title change. I liked all of Kai's matches other than the Yoshida match. Yoshioka stuck the landing there. Shun stuck the landing, had the match with Yoshioka that I think I liked more than everybody else. Had the match with Strong Machine J that did its job. And then had the match with Kikuta that was great. And I think everything through Kikuta getting the belt has actually been pretty strong.
Even with Kobe World 2022.
Checkmates. No response to that. Well said. Well said.
Like,
that was, you're not wrong.
It's something where, like, if it was something that it was just Kikuta just feeling kind of like a lame duck, and now we're looking at like a month where he's basically holding the title hostage. If it was just that, I probably would go B to B plus, because I can't, like, when it's all said and done, we're going to talk about like big Dragongate moments. Daya losing his mask will make the top 5. And I think that if it was something where the Dreamgate picture was better, we'd be talking B plus. But I can't act like that he booked a very strong Kobe World, and that he does not have weird ideas with the Dreamgate.
No, it was my point at Kobe World was I think this is the guy who has a history now of getting too cutesy with the Dreamgate belt at certain points. Instead of being very direct heel versus face, he's done some odd stuff that I haven't always agreed with.
Yeah, it was just something that I felt like that coming to a head. We used to do GM Ryo Saito, how are you doing? It just felt like it was time to do a report card on a week like this one. Did you have any other really thoughts about this Kobe Sumbo Hall show? It was fun, but it did not really, other than Kikuta and Ishin and Fuda deciding to have their own match. It was just a nice monthly show, it felt like.
Yeah, I do want to spend just a little bit more time on Kobe, because I came into this show super down, because it aired on the 30th, but I did not watch it until the day we're recording, the 3rd. And so by that point, not only had the TN injury been confirmed as something serious, but I knew at some point on this show, Nagano was going to get hurt and Fuda was going to get hurt. And life has gotten the better of me lately. I'm behind on everything. I'm behind on Lucha. I'm behind on New Japan. I'm behind on AEW. There's very little wrestling being watched in my life right now, so my finger's a little bit off the pulse. So I don't have great momentum of like, God, I just watched this one great show. Now I'm going to go watch my favorite promotion. I was just basically staring at a loaded gun, going, "Oh my god, I have to watch this Kobe Sambo Hall show where two guys get hurt and their young prodigy is confirmed out for an extended period of time. This is going to suck." And it gets off to a slow start, but I actually really enjoyed this show, and I want to talk about the matches 4 and 5 here just real quickly. The Z-Brats match, Yoishin Kai and Shun versus Fuji Doi, Fuda, and Kondo first, and then we'll talk about D-Courage versus the rookies. I am so impressed with Ryo Fuda, and I have shouted it and shouted it and shouted it, and I think one day I will be proven right. This guy is just so talented. If he can stay healthy, he is going to be a very active participant in things that matter within the scope of Dragongate. And if he can make it to his hometown in Sendai, I think he and Ishin are going to put forth a tremendous Brave Gate match.
Yeah, it is something that Fuda and Ishin basically brawl the entire match, and it rules. And it's something where like you have the ringside brawling that eventually everyone gets back in the ring, but as soon as like Fuda leaves the ring, he goes right over to Ishin and they start smacking the shit out of each other, and it is just awesome. And during that brawl, the entire 8-man tag brawl, do you notice who Fuji went after? It wasn't against the Z-Brats guy.
No, I don't.
Oh, he went after Junior again.
I forgot about that. That's right.
Yeah. So like you had all of this like going with it, and it is something where I'm fully converted on Ryo Fuda. I think that it's something where like I always thought he had the talent. It just was I was not. I come from an era of Dragongate where I remember when people do poorly and then they get put in fat guy gimmicks, and it was something that like there's still something that kind of in the back of my head was going like, I don't know about this. I just don't know. But through the entire build and everything of this, they get to Sendai. It's going to be a belter. And I have all confidence that it will be a great match.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I think it was last week, Ishin and Fuda are tight behind the scenes. So I would imagine they're going to put forth an extra effort here to sort of solidify Fuda. It's funny you mentioned Don Fuji. The other thing I want to bring up with this match was there's a great spot where Fuda goes on this big run of offense and he knocks Ishin into the corner, and Fuda sort of starts to take a breath, to take a break, and Fuji is on the apron just telling him to go after Ishin. And it's a perfect use of Fuji, and it's a reminder like, man, Fuda's been on an island his entire time. At best, you could say he had a loose affiliation with Keisuke Okuda when Okuda's stock was at the very lowest. And I just think Fuda being able to match guys, literally in the sense of color coordination, and having a group around him, even from a kayfabe sense, I just think that is going to do so much good for him. I really hope it happens sooner rather than later. I really like this 8-man tag.
Yeah, it's something where, it's one of the things about Fuda that I think in some ways holds him back a little bit. And it's not like a bad thing. It's something that just kind of happens. You know who he reminds me of personality-wise?
Who's that?
Susumu.
Okay.
He kind of has just like a even kind of disposition. He wears purple. It's one of those things where like I kind of always get a Susumu vibe for him. But this Ishin feud has really pulled out like the fact that there's no doubt Ryo Fuda wants to get his ass, and him showing anger and like this is something that at least for me is a big step forward, because I thought that he was kind of just a very just chilled out striker for a long time. I needed this. I needed to see some fight with him.
Yeah, look, I love him. I'm thrilled for him. I really hope he knocks it out of the park and gets healthy. As for the Open the Dragongate Tournament Championship match, I want to spend just a minute here. Daya Kikuta and Yoshioka versus Nagano, Tanaka, and Kato. What did you think about this from an in-ring perspective?
I was close to Notebook.
As was I.
3 3/4 on it.
As was I.
Yoshiki Kato is someone that I'm so glad he's back and everything is seemingly on the up and up with him, because I really enjoyed the portions with him and Kikuta.
As did I, Mike. I'm glad we talked about this because we're on lockstep here.
Yeah, it is something that Kato, he is such a different kind of person on this roster, and just physically, the fact that he towers over everyone and has like this power fighting, just determination that like it was very earned. Like there was a deep near fall where he hit the modified blood fall on Daya, and I bought it. I was like, oh shit. The rookies that again, Miracle Kato, he's the one rookie who was able to beat anyone on this roster, and he did it. They had me for a moment.
They had me there, and then they had me with Tanaka going for a flash pin on Yoshioka. And I thought this was another really solid Tanaka outing. This was like you said, this was a really good match. I enjoyed this. So if you have not seen this show, watch the last 3 matches. I think they are all well worth your time.
Yeah, like that's the thing about this Kobe show. Like the first half of it, the Kung Fu Masters match, given the fact that it had Punch Tominaga in it, over-delivered to it. You had a Royal Sambo that was randomly like M3K versus Natural Vibes to start that was just kind of there. But when you get to the meat of the lineup here, I mean, 3 matches threatening Notebook, 1 match making it. I really like it's something that even with our consternation, I do thoroughly enjoy this promotion as much as anything else in the world. Especially when you're able to see matches like this where you get to see a back half of the show that really, with the exception of Fuji, Kai, Kondo, and Doi, sickeningly young back half.
Yeah, look, I will end this by saying I think pretty confidently that Dragongate has had a better 2023 than AEW. Let's talk about the Buyuden show happening this week. Mike, I'm going to give you a second to pull up the card. I'm going to have you read it because I'm sure there's names on there that I can't pronounce, but this is coming up in just a few days. Shinjuku Face. This is the Masaki Mochizuki produce shows, the 3rd one from this year. It'll be live on the Dragongate Network. The first 2 shows were a ton of fun. I really loved the fact that they brought them back this year. I've enjoyed every one of them, and I really, really like this card on paper.
Yeah, and something that I've noticed, Case, you know who has not been pulled from this card?
Who's that?
Ryo Fuda.
Oh, boy. All right, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I will have a written review of this up for Voices of Wrestling sometime this week. It's a 5-match card, a whole lot of meat to it. Opening, Ryo Kawamura from representing Pancrase in Yokohama, teaming with Punch Tominaga versus Hikaru Sato and Ryo Fuda. That's you get DG shooters and you get actual shooters on that. Open the Warrior Gate. Kikutaro defends against regular ordinary salary man Minonori Sawa. Trios match: Mochizuki Jr., Yoshiki Kato, and Ryoya Tanaka versus, and I'm reading the translation from Gaor, so I apologize if I get names wrong here, Fujimura, Ozawa, and Owada from Noah.
The Noah rookies. That is my DJ horn. I'm very excited about that match.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Speaking of Noah, Case, we have a match here for me. It's Yamato and Don Fuji, my favorite occasional Dragongate tag team. They're back together. They're reuniting on this one, and they're facing Takashi Sugera and Masaki Miya of Pro Wrestling Noah. Main event: Masaki Mochizuki and Fujita Jr. Hayato versus Masato Tanaka and Dragon Kid. Buyuden remains nonstop bangers.
And I think this is the best looking card of the 3 they've done this year.
Yeah, I am actually really excited to see Punch Tominaga get like absolutely swallowed up by Hikaru Sato wearing a Virgin Killer sweater. I can't wait.
That should be fun. The rookies tag, they've got the right rookies in there, Junior, Kato, and Tanaka. And, the thing with Pro Wrestling Noah, they'll never develop these guys. But as young boys, they're a lot of fun to watch, the Fujimura, Ozawa, and Owada team. So I have very high hopes for that as well. And then before you jump in, I have to note, I can't think of 2 wrestlers with greater dispositions in terms of effort and presentation than Don Fuji and Takashi Sugiura.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, can't you just like mind canon it that they were high school friends? One of them turned out to be the deadbeat. One of them still is kind of a deadbeat, but made something of themselves.
Well, yeah, it's like Segura acts like he's like 3 times divorced, and Fuji just he drowns it out. He's drinking beers in his garage, listening to sports radio,
and watching train videos.
Of course.
Yeah, no, it's just fantastic. And Masaki Miya, I enjoy him. Like,
oh my god, yes.
Yeah, it is something here that like hopefully we get Cranky Yamato here just to add to it. The thought process behind this, I don't know if I'm willing to put Masaki Mochizuki Booker of the Year, but I like the way that he's thinking on this show.
I mean, look at the main event. That is Mochi and Hayato, who Hayato for me is probably a top 50 wrestler in the world this year based on the small sample size that I've seen. All of it's been great against DK and Tanaka, which is, you know, an emotional tag team if you want to get into their FMW tie-in. This is awesome. I can't wait to watch this show.
Yeah, so of course, Masato Tanaka of FMW, Dragon Kid, former FMW referee. He did death matches, not the most famous ones, but more often than not, if you saw a very undersized guy in the referee in death matches, you would see a young Dragon Kid because you got hazard pay doing those. And Atsushi Onita told him he was too small, but Ultimo said, no, you're not too small.
Ultima said, "Wait, you have money? Okay, all right,
Right,
You got hazard pay money. You know, I can give you hazard pay money too. Let's hand it over."
It's a hazard handing me the money.
Yeah, hey, see you in Tijuana.
Yeah. So that's going to be Buyuden. It is on Thursday. That is not the only live show this weekend. We're in October. We're in the busy time. We have Gate of Victory from Tokyo on Korakuen Hall on October 6th. It is a I have the card pull up. Jumiko
Yeah, please. Yep.
We open up with the Mochizukis versus Don Fuji and Yoshiki Kato. Oh yeah. Kagetora and Punch. Kagetora and Problem Dragon versus Ho-Ho Loon and Daiki Yanagiuchi. 25th anniversary memorial match. Genki Horiguchi versus Yasushi Kanda. 25th anniversary memorial match. Susumu Mochizuki versus Kenichiro Rai. Tag team match, Big Boss Shimizu and Strong Machine J versus Shuji Kondo and Eita. 8-man tag, Natural Vibes, KZ, Jason Lee, UT, Jackie Funky Kamei versus the whole complement of Z-Brats. And then the main event, the 87th Open the Triangle Gate Champion Tournament Finals, 3-way trios match, Gold Class, Kota Minoura, Benkei, Naruki Doi versus D-Courage, Madoka Kikuta, Yuki Yoshioka, and Dragon Daya versus Yamato, Dragon Kid, and Punch Tominaga.
Good card. There should be some good stuff on this. Big picture, what are your thoughts here?
Big picture, I like a lot of the show. I'm not going to complain about revisiting Mochizuki Jr. and Don Fuji in match 1, of course.
Nope.
It is. We're going to talk about the 25th anniversary matches in a minute, but I think like the only kind of match is match 5. Like I get like Shimizu because Kikuta is in D Courage, which is a 3-person unit. He has to be in the main event there, so you'll have that build coming out of that main event match. I think I might be a little higher on the show than you, other than it just kind of match 5 just is it's an understandable kind of eyebrow raise.
Yeah, I think I was really high on this card when it came out, and I think I still am. I have to remind myself, oh, wait a minute, no, the 8-man tag should be great, and even there's a chance that Shimizu and Kondo get going, and that match is good. This is a very good show on paper. I should not have slighted it the way that I did.
Yeah, and I'll be interested in seeing, like, Daiki being put into match 2 with the people that are usually in match 2. I hope for a better future for him than this. I just hope that, like, again, this is the old treatment of rookies. I'm just hoping that it's not going to kind of land there. I think Daiki has made some steps that I would like to see more of him than just teaming with Ho-Ho against Kagetora and Punch and Problem Dragon. Why keep on calling him Punch Tominaga?
I don't know. Main event, Triangle Gate Championship match, Gold Class, Minoura, Benkei, and Doi versus Yamato, Dragon Kid, and Punch versus Kikuta, Yoshioka, and Daya. Who do you think is coming away with the belts there?
Oh, Gold Class. I think they're just going to put the belts back on them.
I would not. I think it's 60-40. I would not be surprised if Yamato and Dragon Kid and Punch walk away with these belts.
Yeah, like honestly, I just think that D-Courage, like at that point, you don't want to have your Dreamgate champion have another belt. Like they're okay doing like Brave and Twin, but I don't think Dream should be a part of that. So it's really between those two, and I do still lean heavily towards Gold Class. Yeah,
so I'm looking forward to that. It's been a while since we've had a match like that. Should be a good time.
Yeah, and hopefully it's a traditional 3-way and we get 2 falls. It just bugs me when they have 1 fall 3 ways.
I feel the same way.
But we did kind of gloss over a moment ago. It's the 25th anniversary of Toryumon next January 31st. And it isn't, even though that's going to be the 25th anniversary of the promotion, it's not the 25th anniversary for some guys, as we are going to have 25th anniversary memorial matches for Genki Horiguchi, Yasushi Kanda, Susumu Mochizuki, and Kenichiro Arai, rematches of that first Toryumon Japan landing show from January 31st, 1999.
Yeah, fun stuff here. This has been a year where they've been doing 25th anniversary house shows. I, of course, celebrated Genki Horiguchi's 25th anniversary by talking about his El Numero Uno performance, which turned 20 years old this week. And I expect these two matches to be pretty emotional, and I expect them to be a lot of fun. And I sort of, want to spend the last half of this podcast reminiscing about these four guys.
Yeah, so it's something where, at least with these four guys, it feels like that this is like that generation. The door's not closed, but the door is closing with this. And especially for someone like Kenichiro Arai, who is back off of Dragongate shows, it feels like. It's nice seeing him here. But yeah, Case, I guess I'll hand it over to you. You kind of had a couple of questions for us to talk about with these four guys.
Yeah, so we just spent an hour talking about the here and now in the state of Dragongate. We're going to spend the next 25 minutes talking about the past, the nostalgia, the remember when. It's not the lowest form of conversation here. It's an interesting discussion to be had. We'll start off with Genki Horiguchi. I've got 3 questions for each guy, so I guess we'll actually go question by question here, not guy by guy. But when you think about Genki Horiguchi, what are the first match or matches that come to mind?
Weirdly, for Genki, I think about Mad Blanky versus Jimmy's for Genki.
Oh, the unit disbands match?
Yeah, I kind of go for that one. El Numero Uno I view as kind of like an overall event with that. And here's like the sad thing. As much as I enjoy the fact that he was King of Gate 2012, I could not tell you who he faced in that match.
Ooh, finals of King of Gate 2012. I'm going to have you look up the correct answer to this. My guess is that it was Akira Tozawa.
All right, I'm pulling that up right now. King of Gate.
Because the next year, I know the next year was Ricochet and Shingo in the finals. And
right.
The year before, King of Gate 11, I don't even remember who won that.
So you were correct. It was Akira Tozawa losing in 2012 to Genki Horiguchi, just taking a battle axe to my heart. 2011, it was Hulk versus Kanda, but Kanda got the first title match, and they ran Hulk at Kobe World.
That's right. Okay, do you still have King of Gate 2012 pulled up?
Yes, sir.
Did they do the format where they did the semifinals and finals in Osaka that year?
I just have brackets. I don't have days.
Okay, let me look that up real quick. Now I'm curious just to see. I don't know who he wrestled in the semifinals, and I would like to know that as well. So Genki won.
Genki, he faced Mochi.
Wow, I don't think I've seen that. And that was at Kobe. Okay, so they just did the finals in Osaka. They did Kobe the night prior with Tozawa and DK and Genki and Mochi. I don't remember that Mochi match at all.
Yeah, and I guess the frustrating thing about that 2012 one, now that I'm looking at the bracket, was that Tozawa was kind of finally he beats Doi, he beats Yoshino, and he beats Dragon Kid, and it's okay, he's already taken out the 2 top people of his generation at that point. Now is he going to finally take that step where he's kind of been lagging behind the rest? This was pre the announcement of the Big Six, but this was still in the era of Big Six, and it was Genki's Night in the Sun.
If anybody has this May 18th, 2012 show, please shoot me a DM. The 4th match on this show is Masato Yoshino and Pac versus Shima and Eita Kobayashi, and I would like to watch that.
Yeah, this was the King of Gate that Eita got in because he won King of Chop.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. And he beat KZ in the first round of the tournament to show you where KZ was at this point in his career.
Yep, absolutely. So what's your Genki match that comes to mind?
So I go to Shima, El Numero Uno 2003. The other one that comes to mind, and this is one of the other greatest matches in Dragon System history, and I would certainly put this, if not in my top 3, then at worst my top 5. I think of, and now I'm panicking just to make sure that Genki was in this match, even though I know off the top of my head that he is. because yes, of course he was. This was Kobe World 2005, the Open the Dragongate Championship match between Fixer, and this was Genki and Saito and Dragon Kid, and they wrestled the Blood Generation trio of Shima, Don Fuji, and Naruki Doi. I think this is one of the best matches in the history of Dragon Gate. It's a 5-star match, and a lot of that was built on the back of Genki sort of being the super worker in this match, whereas when they would wrestle in Ring of Honor a year later, that match was built around Dragon Kid and wanting to make Dragon Kid be the star. I don't know if Genki's performance was as heavy-handed. I don't think they were going into this match hoping that Genki Horiguchi was going to come out of it a superstar. If anything, I would think they would want that for Ryo Saito. But Genki, just down the stretch, there's so few wrestlers in all of wrestling that are able to produce engaging closing stretches the way that Genki does. And this was him, to me, at his apex.
Yeah, that's a good point, because when I think about like a best era of Genki, I think it is Fixer era, right?
Yes, Genki with just a little bit of hair left over.
Yeah, it is basically where my hair is at right after a haircut, basically.
Yeah.
I would say. I'm realizing that like no one else other than me knows what I'm saying about that. But yeah, it's something where I think afterwards, like you get into like his big heel run. Like, yeah, it's a kind of around that with Fixer going face kind of at one point. But I think like that heel run, it took a lot to kind of get me back onto the Genki Horiguchi train. But going into it in Fixer felt like he was at his peak.
Yeah, I am not into heel Genki. That's always something that has just never really clicked with me.
Yeah, it just kind of stank. And it's one of those things which is kind of disappointing because I think like objectively he had like one of the most insanely cool heel looks.
Yes, he did, and it just never matched up in the ring there. As for his opponent on this show, Yasushi Kanda, what match or matches come to mind when you think about Kanda?
The match that comes to mind right now, and it's something where like I spent some time. I think it's the Twin Gate win. I think it's that's the one this year. I think that was the one that kind of put it over. Defeating Kongo was like the match for me, just because I think we're seeing his best work right now in his entire career.
Yes.
And it's something that I don't think I shout this from the mountaintops high enough that Yasushi Kanda in his 25th year of pro wrestling, after having one of the more traumatic injuries one could have and come back to wrestling 20 years beforehand, is doing some of the best work out of anyone on the planet. I mean, Case, Yasushi Kanda, 50th best wrestler working today?
Oh, he's going to be my top 50 for sure.
Yeah, I think it has to be him. And even though I think that actually now that I'm really thinking about it, it's the Ray House Finals versus D-Courage is the match. Like, as much as I say it's a title one, it's really the match where they just went all out. And I will think about the opening with the plancha dies to that match for a long time.
I have a very hot take-ish question for you. I'm just curious as to where you stand on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the year 2023, and I am talking purely from a bell-to-bell standpoint, who has had a better in-ring year, Yasushi Kanda or MJF?
Oh, fuck you. Oh, fuck you. Geez. Honestly, you see, this is a tough one because I do enjoy someone who's able to work. And MJF in this face run has proven to be a hell of a worker.
Okay.
I'm a sicko for people not doing as little possible and getting the biggest response.
He's giving like Boston Gardens 1985 show, and that is a compliment from some people, not a compliment from me.
Yeah, no. Who am I enjoying in ring more? It's Yasushi Kanda. Yeah.
I've got 4 Kanda matches at 4 stars or higher this year, including 1 at 4 3/4 and 1 at 4.5. I have 2 MJF matches at 4 stars or higher this year. The 4.5-star match against Bryan Danielson, and then a 4-star match against Adam Cole from June. I could not be lower on MJF as a personality, as a wrestler, as an entity right now. Kanda, meanwhile, having the best year of his career. So there you have it. Yasushi Kanda, a better wrestler than MJF in the year 2023.
Yeah, and it's something where with Kanda, I'm instantly like, I know that this is his mountaintop, to steal a quote from Tim Storm. But I really do think like I now have like a certain energy towards him that I could not have any time before this. Like through the history of Open the Voice Gate case, Yasushi Kanda's stock has never been as high as it has been right now.
No, let's table this discussion for later when we circle back to Kanda, because I think there's a point to be made here. But first, I want to talk about Susumu Yokosuka, Susumu Mochizuki, Jimmy Susumu, if that's okay.
Yes, let's do it.
All right, same question. What are the matches that come to mind with Susumu?
So 2 matches. The first one is Yokosuka Chome versus Amigo Tag. That's the original Jimmy's versus Masato Yoshino and Sachiyoko Boy. That's not as much a Susumu match, but it is, I think, the loudest that I've ever heard Corkin Hall, at least on video, was during that match. And then the further I get away from it, the more I hold the Kai versus Susumu Yokosuka match.
Great poll. Not one I thought about. Great poll.
Yeah, and it's something where I think that when you look at Susumu, he is someone that when we get into legacy, he is like we've talked about him being like the Tim Duncan of pro wrestling, and I probably owe you like $5 at this point for using that poll quote, but it's something where Susumu has just really you could almost pick an era of his career, and I was like trying to think of like, okay, what's the him as a Jimmy singles match? I was like, yeah, he had like that insane match against Flamita, and then from there, I'm just like, oh wow, I think that this guy is someone who has one of the more like shockingly deep match records out of anyone in wrestling working today.
Yeah, I for me, Susumu, you got to look at the Shingo matches, and that is the 2008 match. That is the 3 matches in Dragongate UK, and those are the 2 matches from 2016, the Valentine's Day one and the one from early March at Champion Gate. I think he did his best work against Shingo. I think they're 2 of the greatest, at worst 25 wrestlers. I might put Susumu in my top 20 at this point. Shingo, of course, a top 5 guy. They did their best work with one another. They are, maybe other than Shingo and Will Ospreay, they're each other's best opponents. The other one that I always feel like Susumu doesn't get the love for this match that he deserved is Susumu and Shima versus the Young Bucks from the first ever Dragongate USA show.
Yeah, that one was so much fun. Like, that is one that I think in a lot of ways, especially for where the Young Bucks were, I think that was like a huge step forward for them. And then as well, like basically Susumu and Shima going like, we're going to get you guys over. It's okay.
Yeah. Follow us and you'll be better off in 16 minutes.
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't think like other than like rewind and rewatch, like thinking about like 2009 Young Bucks is one of those like properties. I'm like, oh wow, well, the path you will take to get to where you are now, and that's going to involve basically being paint by numbers by Susumu Yokosuka.
Look, I always tell you in private, I wish I had 28 hours in the day. If I had 28 hours, I could do everything I need to do in my life to pay bills and have relationships with people, but also I could do everything I want to do for this podcast. One of those would be a very, very deep, very, very long rewind and rewatch on the career of the Young Bucks, because let me tell you, by 2009, better than most tag teams to have ever existed. Not historically, but that run in 2009, that starts, what would become a decade of pure destruction.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like, I maybe didn't give them enough credit just then because they were really on board by 2009. This wasn't like them and PWG at that point. Like this was 2 years after doing significant Dragongate work.
Yeah, absolutely. Final guy on this list when we talk about the matches, before we get into eras and legacy real quick as we sort of round out this podcast. Kenichiro Arai, Arkin, your guy. What matches come to mind when you think about him?
So it's something where, and for me, it's very hard for me to kind of look at him outside of this guy's. I think his best work was done with Taku Iwasa as his tag team partner.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the best match of his career, and one that if you're someone, I don't know if this one is up on the network just because this was before they officially became Dangerous Gate. This is September 22nd, 2007. It is for the WAR International Junior Heavyweight Tag Team titles. It was Ryosuke versus Kenichiro Arai and Taku Iwasa Tozawa Juku. That's probably, I think, like his best tag match. But like just for like emotion wise, I'm going to go towards Gate of Destiny Veterans versus Tozawa Juku.
I also have a Taku Iwasa match, although mine is with the aforementioned Susumu and Ryo Saito. This is from the famed No Ring Show in 2008 Summer Adventure Tag League. The Araken and Iwasa versus Saito and Susumu match. Just a perfect example of showcasing Araken and Iwasa's creativity. A tag team like none other in a just excellent pro wrestling match.
Yeah, they had a 4 1/4 star match at the very least in a ring with no ropes, with no
with no nothing.
Yeah, with just basically the canvas on the ground, and it's something with Araken. I think like it's almost unfair, kind of how things kind of played out with him. That like I think he is someone who does not get enough credit for the Torimon era through the end of Tozawa Juku for how he was as a worker, just because of the fall off him, and a lot of it starting with Deep Trumpers and that kind of becoming his character. But
go ahead. Sorry.
But I was just going to say, but leading up to it and really up to his heel turn joining Real Hazard, I think his Real Hazard stuff still was pretty strong. I think you're looking at then a decade of stronger work than people realize.
One of my biggest takeaways, and this was the start of the pandemic when I did this, so even, it was already a few years ago, but when I went back and watched Dragongate's 2005 from start to finish, one of my big takeaways was, even by this point, like, Arai is a really good wrestler, and he really matters. He's not a main event guy, he's not looked at on that level, but he's almost a bit of a gatekeeper. Like, you had to prove yourself against Arai to really mean something, and he's awesome that entire year.
Yeah, there's like a series of, and it's not just through like 2005, but there's like a lot of strong, like grimy singles matches that he has that I don't think get enough credit.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's also a spot where he and Doi are wrestling at Kobe Chicken George, and Doi goes to throw a missile dropkick off the top rope, and Araken blocks it with his head. And so Doi takes the bump even though he kicked Araken in the head, and that is one of the best spots ever.
I think that it is something with Araken that no one got, like, especially out of that Torimon, like, first through classes, no one got the vibe of who they were going to be for the remainder of their career immediately as quickly as Kenichiro Arai.
Yes. Well, I think when you look like that, decisions are made for you.
Fate has made your decision.
Yeah. All right, so real quick here. We already talked about this a little bit with Genki Horiguchi, but the best era of these guys' career, I guess we'll look at this as what unit were they in when they did their best work? Fire these off here. Genki, Kanda, Susumu, and Araken, go.
All right, so as I said, Genki do Fixer, Araken Tozawa Juku, just because, though Shin M2K is up there. But like, I do think like he was like one of the few things that were really kind of working in those two M2K variants. Kanda M3K.
Yep.
Like, I think that it is something that we give our flowers when things happen on this program, and we have to recognize the kind of career he's had. Susumu's the tough one, man, because you can make an argument that Typhoon era Susumu Yokosuka might be the best Susumu Yokosuka.
Didn't even cross my mind. I wouldn't say that, but I can't argue it.
But like going like maybe not like purely Typhoon, but Typhoon into Warriors that like 07 through 09 or before all the shenanigans with Ryo Saito and the heel turns.
Yeah, I mean, even by that point, he's one of the best wrestlers in the world. And we're talking about trash bag pants Susumu, where I think his look is so bad that it's almost distracting. But like, he's incredible. He's just, oh my God.
Yeah, and he saw the singlet at some points.
Yeah,
it was an awful look, but
it's really bad.
Yeah. Well, what are your eras?
I would go do Fixture for Genki, like you said. I would go M3K for Kanda, like you said. I would go with the Jimmies for Susumu. I will always think of him as a Jimmy, and maybe Saito and Genki might have owned that branding a little bit more. But when I think about the Susumu matches that I love, it's Jimmy's era Susumu. That was his best stuff to me. And then for Ariken, I would either say Shin M2K or Final M2K. They were largely the same unit, or at least his presentation was the same. But that era of his career for sure.
He just looks so cool with a Sukaban on.
He looked great, yeah.
Yeah, there was a few people who are more made to wear a Yokosuka jumper. It wasn't Susumu Yokosuka, it was Suwa and Kenichiro Arai. I am mad that tag team never really happened.
Oh, Suwa.
But he looks like he's going to go to, he was mentioning he's going to Susumu's anniversary show.
That's awesome. We talked about that with Jay a few months ago, but just the return of Suwa as a public figure. We talked a lot about, depressing Dragongate things early on. I still think that is something that's just like, I don't know, I see Suwa on my feed every day. We follow each other on Instagram, and I'll, look at, some, shitty concert thing that I filmed and put on my Instagram, and I'm like, oh, Suwa watched this video. That's insane.
Suwa has a lot of thoughts about Postal Service and Lanceism album.
Like Suwa knows more about the Chicago punk scene than he should, just because he's adjacent to my life now. It's wild.
He's going to be at the show on the 7th.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, but oh gosh, Suwa and Ariken. I mean, doing it for us follically challenged guys out there. Just doing it for it.
All right, real quick, and you can answer these in a sentence or two. We don't have to go too long on these. But if I ask you, what's the legacy of Genki Horiguchi? What is your response to that?
The greatest crowd work guy of his era.
Yeah. I think of him. I think Dragongate will be very lucky if they have someone to take over Genki's role and do it for another 25 years. And I think that person could be Kamei. I think that person, could be Nagano or Daiki or, somebody we don't know about yet. But I think sometimes people have the wrong view when they look at, who's going to be the next Shima, who's going to be the next Shingo, who's going to be the next Mochi. And those things are crucial, don't get me wrong. But I also think filling the void that Genki Horiguchi will eventually leave, and has slowly started to leave, is going to be incredibly crucial to this company's success.
Yeah, if Jackie Funky Kamei is 75% of the crowd work guy that Genki Horiguchi has been, I will feel happy.
Yeah, I Dragongate will be in good shape if that happens.
Absolutely so. Konda's legacy, I think you have to look at Konda as proof that you can't write someone off.
Yeah. I mean, I think our answer to this would be drastically different if we had this conversation at this time last year. But he's rewriting history as we speak, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, no, and it's something that, I bet if you were to pull Yasushi Konda aside in 2006 and be like, all right, you're going to come back. You're coming back from this devastating cervical dislocation. One of his vertebrae moved almost as far as it takes to sever his spine. It did not take any, and as we see now, he's living, as much as we could tell, a very fulfilling life. But he had to retire for about 2.5 years, and it was something that I was not around that time. But going through records, going through results, going through things like this, there was no thought of Yasushi Konda coming back. But you can't count someone out, and if you went to Yasushi Konda right before his reunion or his return, where we were like, okay, so this Renaissance idea is going to ruin. It's not going to happen, but stick with it. 2023 will be your year. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Ariken for you, Kay. So I want to hear, what's your Ariken legacy thought?
He was in the wrong promotion. I think if Ariken has the same career, but he does it throughout 7 years of war rather than 25 years of Toryumon and Dragongate, I think there would be, and I use this term lovingly in this instance, but I think there would be perverts online that would tell you, he's, one of the most unheralded workers of the era. This guy got it. Unfortunately for him, the people, at least in the English-speaking world, that would have been his biggest supporters are the people that wrote him off because of the promotion that he worked in. I will always say this about Ariken. I can sum it up pretty easily. Whenever I see him, it puts me in a good mood.
Yeah. And at least for me, I will say that some of that mood is bring me back to Zaojuku when I really fell in love with the promotion. But yeah, imagine if GCW discovered WAR Ariken.
Yeah, oh my God, that'd be He'd be huge there. He's looks like a fucking bum just like the rest of GCW.
I mean, I would guarantee that he would probably have the cigarettes for backstage every show.
Yeah, he could probably get a lot more backstage.
That is true. So
upstanding organization for sure.
Yep, nope, for sure. Susumu. I feel like I should leave this one to you because I have a feeling what you're gonna say.
Well, look, when the history books are written, I don't know if he's the greatest Dragongate wrestler of all time, but he certainly has to be in the conversation. And I think the people that are above him, you're now talking about Masaki Mochizuki and Shingo and maybe Shima and maybe Yamato, but I think Susumu's one of the best people to ever do this thing that we all love. And he will never get the credit he deserves. It bothers me. I think it's unfair. I don't understand how he's not universally beloved and recognized. And, there's no scenario in which I think he'd ever leave. Maybe if you went to New Japan, it would be a Shingo thing where people go, oh, I get it now. But it shouldn't have to come to that. He is just one of the most talented people in this entire industry's history.
Now, Case, I have a first thought, worst thought question for you. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I want you to compare these two guys. I'm going to give you their names. Think about their match catalogs. Think about their in-ring careers. Which one's better? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Susumu Yokosuka, Shima.
Well, I believe, and I will pull up my last greatest wrestler ever ballot. I might have had them next to each other.
Okay.
The difference is going to be, for as much as I've enjoyed parts of the last 5 years of Shima's career, he just has not had the continued success that Susumu Yokosuka would have had. So therefore, and as I confirm here, in 2021, I had Shima at 27th all time. I had Tomohiro Ishii in the middle at 26, and I had Susumu Yokosuka at 25th all time. I could very reasonably talk myself into Susumu being a top 20 guy. Now, he would have to get through some tough names here. I've got Okada, I've got Kurt Angle, I've got Jumbo Tsuruta, I've got Nick Bockwinkel and Riki Choshu ahead of him. But at the very least, I think Susumu belongs in that name of guys. And Okada and Angle and Jumbo and Bockwinkel and Choshu, I think Susumu Yokosuka fits in with that group very well. And historically, you've heard it here, Susumu Yokosuka has had a better career than Shima.
There we go. I don't have anything else to add, Case. I think that was something I'm going to have to go and reassess where I had the Dragon System guys on my GWE now. Like, we're at the midway point. It's time.
Hey, remember when we did a podcast with Alan like 3 years ago, and I was like, I just can't put Bryan Danielson in my top 10 because I think, because I think that he's wasted a decade of his life wrestling in WWE, and I don't enjoy him there. And even the stuff that everybody likes, like the John Cena match and the Triple H match, I don't like as much as other people. And then you watch him in AEW and go, oh no, this is the greatest wrestler ever. He did waste a decade of his life in a promotion that was beneath him, and he knew it was beneath him, and I was fucking right about that. Oh, God, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. He's doing the best work of his career now. He's like Yasushi Kanda.
Two guys having the best year of their career.
Oh,
Bryan Danielson, Yasushi Kanda. I can't think of a better note to go out on. Case, anything else before we're out of here?
No, this was a blast. This was a good episode, Mike.
Yeah, this was one that I think we peeled back the curtain a little bit earlier today. We were trying to figure out what we were going to talk about. And I think that this was one of the more fun episodes we've done in a while.
Like and subscribe and share the podcast and donate on Red Circle. And I hope all of you have a great day.
Absolutely. And that's going to do it for us here. We're at Open Voice Gate. Case is at, in your case, I'm at Fujiheya. We'll be back with you next week. Take care.
Music. It's not just part of our daily lives, it's part of our wrestling fandom as well, and it has been for decades. That's where this show comes in. Music of the Mat, the podcast devoted exclusively to the music of pro wrestling, hosted by Andrew Rich. Hey, that's me. Each episode delivers a different topic with a variety of great guests, fun conversations, musical analysis, and of course, a heartfelt pun or two. New episodes drop every other Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast app of choice. Check out Music of the Mat only on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
Hello there, my name's Neil David and I'm the host of Eurograps Express, the podcast exclusively dedicated to the wrestling of Europe. If it's wrestling and it happens in Europe and it's good, we talk about it. Whether it's Rev Pro, Progress, WXW, Passion Pro, Pro Wrestling Chaos, Pro Wrestling North, we don't care, we talk about them all. If it's good and it's exciting, I want to share it with you. We're on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Check us out on the feed. Check us out on Twitter at EuroGrapsEXP. And join us for chat about European wrestling and a little bit of chat about cheese. Hopefully see you there.